What's going on, folks? This is the VGB's podcast, episode 6. I am your host, John Warren. Thank you so much for joining us. This is a weird one this week because we are riding solo, you and me. You and me are riding solo. No Nikki Grayson this week. A lot of scheduling conflicts. Not really on Nikki's end, more on mine. It's a long story. I'm leaving town on Friday for the weekend on short notice. We moved stuff from Thursday to Friday initially to not record on the holiday. And then I had to move stuff around. So I appreciate everyone's patience. But yeah, this is me riding solo with you. We do have a good show for you. There's not actually like that much like hard news to talk about. So what I thought I would do is essentially talk about a few games that I've been playing and some details from those. Which I think is a fun way to spend this time. First, I want to contemplate, there was a new drop of Nintendo Switch Online games. I'm trying to find a list of that as we roll on. Switch Online. I just had the thing up. Let me open it up again. Because it's a weird slate. It's a weird slate. Here we go. Here's the new one. Here's the new list. Here it is. Here it is, folks. Here's the new list. I'll pull up the video too. Why not? I'll show us the video. If you're watching this on video, thanks for your patience. I'm going to mute the video as well. There's only really one of these that I know of that I've played before, but it's kind of fun. Cobra Triangle is one of those that I never... I think I had a friend that had Cobra Triangle. I thought it really looked cool because it's that kind of isometric action game. It's like a boat. It's a boating thing, and it's like, you know, kind of tanky controls because the perspective never changes, obviously. That's kind of a fun one. I dig that. I dig a lot of these NES games that, you know, kind of fell off the radar. Solar Jetman is also one that I feel like I had friends that had played this before. Really interesting concept, kind of roving around in a multi-directional ship, which is kind of cool. Definitely looks like it's ahead of its time, I feel like. But that's an old one. I always love Sunsoft games. This is Mystery of Atlantis. Looks a little bit like a Pitfall, but with just a lot more kind of almost like ghouls and ghosts, ghouls and goblins vibe. You're throwing little bombs and stuff. It's kind of fun. So I'm excited to actually try some of these out. Mock Rider is an interesting one, of course. It's motorcycle kind of right behind the perspective shoulder racing game, but it's also got combat, which is a lot of fun. So I dig stuff like that. Ravioli decided to join me. You can see Ravioli the puppy on the video version of these, which you can see over at vgbs.com and also our YouTube channel. youtube.com/@VGBs. This is, of course, golf, and this is the one that I played the most. My dad and I played this one a lot. A guy that looks an awful lot like Mario is the dude that you're controlling. I liked golf a lot. I played that a lot. Now, I played Donkey Kong Jr. a ton, but I actually never played Donkey Kong Jr. Math. And I'm really intrigued to go over to this one because it's got this kind of edutainment vibe with the Donkey Kong Jr. Gameplay. And I really like Donkey Kong Jr. It was one of my favorite NES games for a long time. And it's just got a really interesting vibe. And then Urban Champion is a fighting game, which is bizarre. It looks really, really clumsy. I feel like I've read about this game and never really played it, never really even seen it in action. So it's very funny to me. If you're not watching the video, just imagine like the opening cutscene of Street Fighter 2, where those two guys that are not characters are basically fighting with each other in front of that building. Imagine that, but looking like even clumsier and worse. And that's kind of the vibe of the July 2024 game update game Urban Champion. But that one looks, that update's interesting. I mean, I really do like that they are, I don't want to say scraping the bottom of the barrel because I don't think that's really true, but they are trying new stuff and stuff that's a little bit off the beaten path, I think, from what people are expecting. They've already put a lot of like really, really major good stuff onto Switch Online. So it kind of makes sense. All right. I played 3 games recently, like quite a bit. I played 3 games the most. I'm going to start with the maybe the most kind of fascinating and one that I think people have been talking about the least. No, actually, that's not true. One I'm talking about in a second, the one I played the most of is definitely way more off the beaten path. But this one is at least one that like got a lot of play during SGF. And I never got a chance to check it out firsthand, but I did get a chance to get in the closed alpha. This is Fragpunk. It is a competitive hero shooter. When they showed the trailer for this game and I saw some early gameplay, it looked a lot like a fast-paced, maybe Apex Legends game. The central conceit of Fragpunk is you have cards that you can play at the beginning of each round, unlocked by performing well in the matches itself. You can then kind of spend currency on these cards per round that change the gameplay. Maybe gives you an advantage, maybe gives the entire field some sort of enhancement, but it's really cool. It's a really cool conceit. But I have to say, when I actually played this game, it actually does play a lot like Valorant. You can't do like slide crouches. It's not a game where you're super nimble. I think your general sprint is a bit faster than Valorant, so it's like it's still a little bit faster. But what I would say is really interesting is that the gunplay itself feels a lot more like Apex Legends. It feels really tight. It feels really responsive. And I like the way it plays with the gunplay. It feels very immediate and fun and juicy, and it's really fun to shoot folks up. When you pop them in the head, do a headshot, it makes this kind of pinata noise and effect, which is kind of cool. It's a very high style game. If you're watching the video version of this, you'll be able to see that. Lots of colors, lots of really bright effects. And I like that. I dig the vibrancy of it. I think the vibrancy might be close to overplayed, but I think this game actually does it in a maximalist way that other games are actually not engaging with as much. But I liked this game. There were some cards that I was able to see in action that caused, like, there was a rainstorm in one level that caused like a flood, and that flood would take you in one direction. And if you tried to move in the other direction, you're very slow. So that was really interesting. It affects both teams, so you just have to be kind of smart about how you use that stuff. But it's cool. There are other cards that allow. I think one of my favorites was your entire magazine goes into one clip. So basically, for that round, you just have, let's say, 140 rounds of large machine gun ammo. And that's all going to be in one clip. So you never have to reload. You're able to just kind of spam stuff and never have to worry about a long reload animation. And that's fun. The way it's also like Valorant is that before every round, you're choosing your loadout. Instead of spending currency, you're essentially penalized if you die. If you die, and thank you, IGN, for this. I actually took some footage of this, but it actually turned out really bad. My OBS settings were really crappy, so I just deleted that. I have some good footage of other games I've taken coming up, but I liked I had a good time with this game. The Valorant gun spending, you're actually penalized per death. So when you die with the weapon that you equipped in the previous round, you're basically locked out from picking it again. So you're kind of incentivized, like, hey, like when you're on a roll, like, pick the stuff you want. But if you feel like you're if you have a favorite weapon, maybe don't start the match with that, because if you lose in that first round, you're going to lose access to that gun. So, it's kind of an interesting strategy. It's best out of 7 rounds. The couple matches I played, one was pretty much a straight. I think the other team won 4-1. But the second match I played was a lot of fun. And it was 3-on-3, 3 games to 3 games. And then in the final round for match point, it actually takes you to a 5v5, but 1v1, like almost a penalty shootout, like in a soccer match, where you're choosing the order in which your players go in rounds, and then each of those is 1v1. Let's say you take 90% of your damage, but you win that round. You're only carrying that 10% sliver of health into that next round. So it becomes this very tense affair, which I really loved. I thought that was actually really fascinating. I did not play well in that match in the normal rounds, but in the sudden death, I actually won a few straight rounds because I was using a hero that had a healing ability, and I could basically just like pop that healing ability right when the 1v1 sudden death round would start. I would heal myself up a bit, and then I would end up winning that 1v1 match. So it's a kind of a fun way to do match based. It's like not sudden death based on the actual objectives. I'll talk about objectives in a second. But it's more of just kind of a 1v1 death match kind of thing, which I think is really fun. That's maybe my interesting critique of this game, is that the card system makes it feel very unique in a lot of ways, which is wonderful. So every round usually has like a slightly different feel. You're all kind of voting based on your point system. You basically get 3 cards shown to you, and you basically can spend your own individual currency to like essentially vote for a card. Let's say you have like 3 points saved up, and like there's a 2-point card. You can by yourself spend your 2 individual points to buy that card, but it's kind of a voting system. Like let's say someone only has 1 available point to spend, and they go spend it on something that indicates that they want it, but maybe they can't afford the rest of it. So you're then it's up to you and your team whether or not you want to essentially spend your points to buy this teammate a card that'll maybe, play into the way that they're playing or their favorite hero or whatever. So it's kind of an interesting way to do this. And I like that system. So in theory, every round is going to feel a little bit different. But the objective is very Valorant based, like where you pick up a detonator and you have to go plant it in someone's base and then, defend it once you plant it. Very Valorant. If you've played Valorant, if you've played Counter-Strike, you're probably familiar with that objective. The problem is that I also felt like every match kind of played out the same way. Only one round of the, 14 or so that I played actually really came down to planting that detonator and letting it go off. The rest of the rounds, everyone more or less dropped the objective and just played team deathmatch, which was a lot of fun, but it kind of begged the question of like, okay, is the objective really important, or is it kind of a wrinkle in order to kind of put pressure on another team instead of kind of like the objective? Like Valorant, I think very much like centers the entire premise of the game around objective-based gameplay. And Counter-Strike kind of does the same thing in a lot of ways. But, I have seen those matches also devolve into more or less team deathmatch. But I felt like Fragpunk devolved into team deathmatch faster, which is maybe not a complaint necessarily. It just kind of begs the question of like, what's the meta of this game going to be once it actually comes out? Are people really going to be eaten up with the objectives? Will the devs actually kind of go back and double down on the objectives and change the way this plays out to kind of center those as more important? Or is it just going to be, the kind of this interesting wrinkle of like, well, you have these objectives, but they only exist essentially to put pressure on another team, and that's also kind of its own interesting wrinkle. So I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, but it was interesting that while every round in theory played very differently, it all kind of devolved to the same kind of, all right, let's go kill everyone else vibe. The maps I played were also pretty fun. They felt large and interesting without feeling too large. You definitely know you're in these kind of arenas where you're going to be running into players a lot. So I had a good time playing this game. I definitely will want to squad up with people again when it maybe enters into a more open beta, or maybe if they do another closed beta. That'll be fun. But this game was cool. Obviously, like from a business perspective and kind of like where we are with games like these, I don't know where this fits in with people's plans. Like, is this different enough to warrant it hopping in front of games like Valorant or Apex Legends, or even Fortnite? Because I think you have to kind of lump all that stuff in together at this point. I don't know. It's very interesting. I think like, one of my other complaints with this game is that the style of writing and the style of kind of like hero shooter, there's nothing new here. This is all well-trodden ground. Everyone's got their own like very loud personality. All the archetypes are there. They're just typically kind of like, gender swapped or like race swapped based on other hero shooter games. Like, it's like, oh, here's the poison one from Apex, but it's like a French lady now. There's just not a lot of ground that has not been covered by these hero shooters yet. I mean, that has not already been covered by these hooter shooters. No, these hero shooters. But it's cool. I like it. I think it's a good game. It's a well-made game. Excited to play more of it. I just don't know, what it moves in front of, I guess I should say. So, but it'll be cool to see. Definitely had fun, and yeah. So that's Fragpunk. Another game that I have played a lot of, probably the most. I played the most of this following game is Street Fighter 6. I played Street Fighter 6 a lot over the past week because I have wanted to take Bison for a spin. And this is footage that I took from the game itself. Let's fast forward, to actually seeing the game in action. I played exclusively with Bison this past week, trying to do ranked matches, getting to know him outside the context of the 25 minutes or so I played with Bison at SGF, and I had a blast. I had a blast with Bison. As I mentioned in a previous episode, Bison is just kind of the faster, more aggressive version of himself from Street Fighter 2 and 4. I feel like he really was more of a hulking, range limited, even though he has the Psycho Crusher fighter from 5, and in 6 he's really back to being someone who can press and press and press, and I like that kind of gameplay. And it's just kind of a return to form for that character. Love the design. It's so classic, obviously. His as you're seeing in my footage here, I went with his classic costume, the blue version, but his kind of standard costume is kind of raggedy. He's wearing the same pants and knee guards and all that stuff, but they're all ratted, and he's basically been living on streets looking for his psycho power again. Is the story. He's got a horse now. Most people are saying that must be some sort of nod or throwback to the Bison portrait from the movie where he's on that horse. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's certainly a fun throwback, and they even do the same positioning at some point, so I have to imagine it's probably accurate. But I had a lot of fun with Bison. Obviously, the greatest hits were there. He's got that press knee, that double knee, which used to be a charge attack, but now it is a quarter circle, which means that you can kind of set things up a little bit faster. And then, like, really the key to Bison's gameplay in Street Fighter 6 are psycho mines. And psycho mines are a brand new mechanic where some attacks will basically allow him to implant this timed psycho mine onto the opponent. After a certain amount of time, that mine is going to explode and basically juggle the opponent. The opponent can basically undo the psycho mine by landing some hits or by blocking a move from a Bison that would trigger the psycho mine. So, for example, if I land the Psycho Mine and then I hit a Psycho Crusher and actually hits, what it's going to do, it's going to hit the opponent for a Psycho Crusher, and then in midair, that thing is going to detonate no matter how long it's been on the opponent, and also explode, setting up more combo potential. So really, really devastating, right? But if the opponent blocks the Psycho Crusher, it's going to basically detonate the Psycho Crusher during that block, and so nothing is actually hurting the opponent. So it's a cool mechanic. The one I think drawback from Bison, at least for me, I'm not a high level player. So high level players, you should basically like listen to them if you are also a high level player, because I'm not. So I probably sound like an idiot when I talk about this stuff. But the big thing with Bison, the Psycho Mind stuff, is that feels very core to how you get the most out of Bison in this iteration. And Psycho Minds, like as you might imagine, aren't necessarily all that easy to implant. There's a slow hulking maneuver that essentially plants that move. It's very telegraphed. It's very easy for your opponent to spot, and you really have to make it part of a combo or part of a punish to make it work. So when you do one of those drive moves that basically stun blocks your opponent, those big flashy moves, those parries, those are opportunities to get in that psycho mine. And I'm not a very good player, so it's not that easy to get this stuff going, right? So so that's my kind of take on the new Bison stuff. I think he's a blast to play. I'm really excited about a lot of these new characters coming up. Obviously, we still have Terry and Mai from Fatal Fury, which I'm very excited about. We also have Elena, who was so broken in 5, but also a favorite from 3, which is really fun. So I'm excited for those new characters. Like Street Fighter 6 is just really good. I went back to Tekken 8 for a little while. I dipped back into a couple other fighting games for a little while. Took a really big break from Street Fighter 6, and getting back into it with Bison. What a treat that game is. I certainly not new information, but it is such a delightful game, and Bison's a great character. So that's been a fun one to get back into. Let's dip into the last of the games that I played. Let's see, did this overwrite this? Okay, this is good to go. And then I can start this. And we are sharing the screen. This is a game called The Land Beneath Us. This is from a studio called Fair Play Studios. They're a Thai studio, actually. This kind of got on my radar from Taylor Hicklin. Hi, Taylor. Thanks for pointing me in this direction. It's a very interesting tile-based, turn-based, dungeon-crawling roguelite game. And I wasn't so much intrigued by the look of this game. Like, it's got, very capable, if unremarkable pixel art. It's got capable, if unremarkable, visual novel elements that if you've played a Hades, you'll very much understand the flow of this game. You're supposed to kind of dive into the lands beneath us in order to, vanquish this evil that's happening. And you're going on these runs, and then you go back to a base to unlock permanent upgrades and things like that. Story doesn't really make a lot of sense. I don't think the writing is all that great. It's a very tongue-in-cheek, he's right behind me, isn't he, kind of writing. So no big marks for me for a lot of this stuff, but I think the gameplay is compelling enough that even if that stuff is not your cup of tea, you might be willing to look, past it and get into the game. if you're watching this on YouTube, you can kind of see that it's a grid-based game, and everyone in the grid basically moves and operates one space at a time. No one moves without you moving, so it is turn-based in that way, but it is super. You get into a rhythm. At least I found in the hour or so I played of the land beneath us. I really got into a rhythm, and it's not a rhythm-based game. It's not like Cadence of Hyrule or Crypt of the Necrodancer, where like things are moving in the sync to a rhythm, but you do get into a rhythm, I find, which I really enjoyed, and it felt really cool. So you basically are assigning weapons to your 4 directions. So up, down, left, and right. You start with nothing. You equip your first weapon and your first relic, which are passive abilities, in that first room. And you're basically deciding, what direction you want to assign a weapon to. Eventually, you'll get 4 weapons, and one will each be assigned to each direction. But they're different weapons. So one's just a standard sword, maybe, but then you also might have like a spear, which reaches more than one tile away, or a gun, which reaches more than one tile away and also might create a knockback effect, or a claymore, which will not do a lot of base damage, but will also do like a ton of critical damage if you have like a lot of critical damage relics equipped or something like that. So it's really about building a build. If you've played a Hades or most roguelites, you'll be very familiar with this. But I enjoyed the kind of the grid-based thing. You start to make a lot of like calculations about like, okay, you can see where enemies are about to strike, and the tile that, is about to get hit lights up, and you don't want to move into that tile, or you want to move out of that tile if you're in one. But you also start to do a calculus of like, okay, well, actually this enemy is almost dead, so I don't need to worry about moving. I just need to worry about actually attacking them. Your moves always kind of happen before the enemy moves if it's only a split second. So if you attack, you're going to undo that attack because you've killed them already, that kind of thing. The really interesting thing is that, when it gets harrowing, where there are a lot of enemies on the screen, where there are a lot of different maybe objectives or ways to kind of get trapped in a corner or something, maybe you're surrounded and your tile lights up. You're about to get hit with an attack. But you have weapons that are equipped that when you move, they actually strike something 2 tiles away, let's say. And let's say there's something 2 tiles away in the direction that you need to move to get out from under the attack tile. Well, if you move, you're actually not going to move. You're going to basically just attack where you are. And maybe you kill an enemy or hit a crate and get some gold, but you're not going to move out of that spot. So it's kind of an interesting way to think about building your character. You have to be really smart and think kind of ahead of time strategically about, okay, if I've got all assigned weapons that attack at this distance, I need to really behave like this all the time. I can't get surrounded. If I get surrounded, I'm basically just going to start attacking with distance, and I'm not going to be able to move. My nimbleness is going to go away. But there are also weapons that allow you to basically strike and then move behind your enemies too. So there's just like a lot of interesting wrinkles you can kind of put into your character, but combinations of weapon and relic that make a lot of different combinations. The further you get into this game, and I don't think it's really a spoiler, but you also unlock kind of directional based moves, meaning like you can essentially have a special move that, if you go left, up, down, right in that order, you'll be able to unleash a special attack that does a lot of damage or does like an AoE effect or something like that. And I think like there's just a lot of different combinations that you can employ in this game that I think are really interesting. Bottom line for me is that like I don't know if I'm going to come back to this game. I think it's good. I think it's interesting. I don't know if it does things better than Hades. I'm more interested in Hades' action-like gameplay. But if you're someone that needs things to be a little bit slower, a little bit more methodical, a little bit more pensive about how you build out your character, and has that, really kind of nice pixel art style. If you're more prone to liking that, this will be a game that you like. And there are some mysteries that you need to unravel. It's not super straightforward. There is stuff. I don't know if it's as high quality as some of the other games that you might be playing in this kind of genre. But I do think the gameplay is really, really smart in a way that I was excited to kind of keep diving in. Again, I don't know if I'm going to keep going back to it because my personal and professional backlogs are just crazy, crazy, crazy busy and long. But I did like this game. So this is The Land Beneath Us. It is basically available for every major platform. I think PlayStation 4 is the only place it's not available, but it's on PS5, Xbox, Steam, Switch. It's everywhere. It's out right now. I was given a code by the publisher, and I appreciate them for allowing me to dive into this game. It's pretty good. Land Beneath Us is available now. Let's get into Hive questions, huh? We go to the Hive every single episode. We started this last episode. If you are not a Hive member, you can do that right now by going to vgbs.com/join. vgbs.com/join. You have several different tiers ahead of you. You can do a monthly, you can do a yearly. There's Inner Hive and just regular Hive. Hive is the most common thing that people sign up for. It gives you bonus episodes of the podcast. There are a couple of them out on that feed right now. It gives you early access to certain articles. It also gives you the Hive content section on our Discord, which means that you can ask us questions and we will answer them on the podcast. We have a few really good ones. We had one from last week that we weren't able to get to. And it comes to us from Bone Chug Actual. Thank you so much, Bone Chug. Is there a path for AAA developers to de-escalate from exponentially increasing costs of development that are incurred each cycle? Bone Chug also says, or is this something that just cannot be undone? The toothpaste is out of the tube, et cetera, et cetera. I think this is a great question, and I think it's obviously too difficult to maybe adequately answer in one podcast. I think we could probably spend an entire limited series or something on this kind of question. But I'm going to do my best to answer it. I think there is a path. I think there is a path that involves some contraction, involves some scaling back, and making more deliberate financial choices about what you're doing, which is kind of what a lot of these people have already begun doing, to the detriment of a lot of projects that are, I'm sure, super promising, but now they've magically decided that they don't have the bandwidth to do them. I'm looking at you, Matt Booty, and Xbox very specifically, because y'all are the ones that decided to close a bunch of studios after buying a bunch of studios, because suddenly you don't have the bandwidth. So if you're contracting, you can be more deliberate about what projects you're investing in. Or they could invest and not invest in more projects, but more support for the existing projects that they have. They could do these things. We are seeing them do contraction, but we could see them doing investment and having more support staff, more early intervention, which feels like is something that the Arcane Austin probably needed, was early intervention into Redfall and making it something that was going to be a more viable project. I've heard some people say that those new updates to that game have been nice. Obviously it's like too little too late for that team, but that's another subject, I suppose. I think there is a path, and I think it involves a deeper investment in existing projects or contraction and being more deliberate about the projects that you fund. But do I think that we are in any sort of capacity with personnel that those people at the top are going to be incentivized to do these things in a way that is smart? No. not long term. I think this contraction is going to sound good, and it's going to allow those profit margins to get nice and fat again. But it doesn't really change the kinds of investment that they will start doing once those margins start to get fatter. They will then reinvest and make big, loud investments again and try to make way too many things at once without giving them the proper support staff to do it, without doing the proper intervention, and it will happen again. It's just a cycle. So is there a path? Yes. Will anyone take it? Probably not. The other hope is that maybe there's some sort of regulatory options that will, and the other elephant in the room here is unionization, right? Like, I think if unions become a norm, and people make games that a great piece about this. Chris Pratt talked to a labor union, and they filmed it, and it was a good episode of their show. I mean, I guess they don't really do shows; they do ad hoc videos, but that was a good video of theirs. Unions do have a place in this, and we're seeing more unions pop up and start to form in AAA spaces, and that is going to affect things at some point. And if more of it happens, then it will affect things at some point. And then the conditions in which people are making games have to be better. And so then there are ways that I think people have to get more, people at the top have to get more deliberate about the way they spend. If they are not allowed to spend with the idea that they will be able to purge everything later, if they know that that's not a button that they can push, they will probably be smarter about the ways that they spend money. Probably. But they'll be working to find loopholes the entire time on how to circumvent that stuff. Rest assured. But I do believe that that is part of it. Regulation is also part of it. So if regulatory bodies begin to actually look at these companies and look at the way that they're doing these layoffs versus kind of the spending that they're doing, it may happen. But I also think that's a long shot, especially if Trump gets elected. That's never going to happen unless it's a Chinese company, Chinese parent company. And then Trump is going to look really hard at that. If Biden gets elected again, or if Kamala Harris gets elected, we don't really know how that's going to work. There's an off chance that some regulatory stuff might come back in vogue. But the regulatory stuff that was at the heart of the Activision Blizzard acquisition by Microsoft was so shoddy. They had no idea how to try that case. So I have really very little faith in kind of regulatory bodies taking care of this. But that is also something that would affect this, obviously. No, it would be labor unions and also these kind of contractions or investments. Those are paths. I think unionization is much more likely than a sudden change in philosophy, right? So that's a long answer for a question that probably deserves a longer answer, and one that has multiple perspectives. But I'm answering it now by myself. And there you have it. Thanks for that question. It's a really good one. Saturn asks, which Kingdom Hearts game is your favorite? That's a great question. Thank you so much, Saturn, for asking. I have played the 3 mainstream numbered Kingdom Hearts games. I've played 1. I've beaten 1. I've played 2 and played quite a bit of 2. And I've played 3 and only played about 5 hours of it. I did not like 3. I think 2 is better. I have a sick fondness for 1 because it was the first, and it was an interesting game at the time. I still do not think those games are very good. I don't think they feel good to play. I don't think the story stuff is wacky in a way that makes me happy. But it's been a while, and I have made a solemn vow. We launched VGBs and had a good time doing that, and it was fun. And I want to eventually reward the audience, maybe sooner than later, by beginning to play the Kingdom Hearts series on stream. So look forward to that. And I don't know if we'll be playing every single permutation. It kind of feels like I should. All of those things just dropped on Steam and I bought them all. So maybe that's right. Maybe we do some big drive on Twitch in order to make all of that kind of happen. Okay, let's do a drive to play the 24.5 by 4 sleep Kingdom Hearts 0.2 whatever. Yeah, I think, but two seems like the best one. And I don't think I'm just saying that because that feels like it's kind of the popular answer. Like there's a reason it's the popular answer. It feels like it's the best one of those. But yeah, looking forward to playing it. Saturn also asked, can you show us ravioli? I did show you ravioli at the beginning. Ravioli is now eating dinner. So I can't show you now, but if you go back to the very beginning of the episode, ravioli was in my lap. Just go back if you're watching this. Just know that he loves you. Finally, Funkicle asks, have I ever contemplated roasting my own coffee beans? Funk, that's a really good question. It doesn't seem hard, does it? I think there is kind of an elegant, easy way to basically, we have whole beans. We grind our own beans to make espresso and coffee. We're already doing like the part that kind of sucks. So why not take the additional step in getting some unroasted coffee beans and doing our own roast? I'm willing to try it. You didn't ask, but I'm a big fan of Intelligentsia coffee beans. They're roasters. I believe they got their start in Illinois, but they also have coffee shops in Los Angeles. That's how I know them. We used to get our beans from them when we lived there. We bought an espresso maker back in 2016. And that thing is still going strong 8 years later after being used at least once a day for the past 8 years. It's one of the most impressive machines that I've ever purchased. It has not broken once. I've not had to replace a part once. We have just kept it clean and we've just kept it going. And it's one of those Breville basic model espresso makers that has a grinder on top. It costs, I think, $600 retail. It certainly is paid for itself, which is amazing. And I think that's our next frontier, right? Roasting our own beans. I'm willing to try it. I don't think I'm ever going to make my own chocolate, but I would roast my own beans. I think my oven sucks. I know that. I feel like it would make a lot of sense to move into a place with a good oven. I think we're going to sell this house pretty soon and leave this oven behind. It's probably the worst oven I've ever owned. Came with the house. I don't think I want to replace this oven before I leave unless a realtor is like, you have to. But I mentioned on a different show. No, it was the show. It was just last week. That heat just fully escapes from the stove with the oven. So it's time to get a new oven. So I kind of feel weird about roasting coffee beans in an oven that doesn't work very well. But maybe it doesn't matter. But yeah, I don't know. Why not? Why not try? Let us know at home. Come into the Discord, discord.gg/VGBs. And once again, that's VGBs.com/join. Join the Honey Hive. We're having a good time in Discord. We're having a good time on these bonuses that we've recorded a couple times, which only the Hive gets to hear. And obviously, you're hearing some Hive questions get answered right here on the show, which I love doing. So it's a blast to have folks join the Hive and hang out with us. That's going to do it for the show. I know it's a shorter one, solo effort. I really appreciate everyone's patience. We should be back to normal next week with a new episode with Nikki and a guest. And I'm excited for some of the guests that we have coming up. Some folks that I've wanted to have on since we launched, and maybe some folks that I haven't talked to since the Fanbite days. So I'm excited to have a couple folks on shows. So definitely stay tuned for that. And if you haven't followed our Twitch channel, it's twitch.tv/VGBs. We will do a Tuesday morning stream there every Tuesday. It's called Wake Up Honey. It's Tuesday. We watch a lot of videos. Sometimes we play games and talk about games, but a lot of times it's kind of a variety show in the morning. It's a lot of fun. We are going to start streaming more generally with the VGBs channel. So make sure you follow twitch.tv/VGBs and catch us there. I mentioned earlier, youtube.com/@VGBs is where you'll get to see the video versions of this. And also there'll be a part of the site, a post on the site, VGBs.com with the podcast video on it as well. Thanks so much for joining us. This has been a blast. Another great week in the books. We have some great pieces up. Merritt K had an amazing piece up about playing the orc, the specific orc class in Warhammer 40k Dark Tide that all basically role plays as these like big galoots. It's really, really, really good. Steven Scaife posted his first piece on the site about Pacific Drive and a playlist from that soundtrack that he really likes to get him through that game. Some really amazing stuff. And if you haven't read Moira Hicks's piece about the sexual nature of Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater's cure system, it's by far our most popular piece on the site since we launched. It's really, really good. It's an awesome piece. So definitely go check that out. And every day we're doing singers. Those little numbered reviews are a lot of fun. Expect our first couple of big reviews. That's our 3-way system. No, yes, hell yes. Expect our first 2 reviews in July, which is very exciting. So keep it locked on to VGBs.com. All right, folks. Thanks again. I've been John Warren. Thanks for joining me. And until next time, just keep on buzzing.